Get that dirty boy away from my chess set! Richard Blackwood's voice cut through the marble foyer of his Connecticut mansion like a blade. The billionaire tech mogul stood towering over 12-year-old Marcus Williams, who had accidentally brushed against an antique chessboard while helping his mother clean. Blackwood snatched the black knight from Marcus's small hands and shoved the boy backward, sending him stumbling into a crystal vase. These people don't belong near anything requiring intelligence. Look at him. Probably think a pawn is something you sell at a shop. The wealthy guests erupted in laughter as Marcus steadied himself, his mother Elena rushing to clean up scattered chess pieces with trembling hands. But something flickered in Marcus's dark eyes as he stared at that black knight rolling across the pristine floor. Not fear, but fierce determination. Have you ever been so humiliated that it awakened a power inside you no one saw coming? Blackwood Manor stood like a fortress of privilege on 15 manicured acres in Connecticut's wealthiest district. Every detail screamed superiority, from the imported Italian marble floors that cost more than most people's annual salaries to the hand-carved mahogany panels that lined the walls like silent witnesses to decades of entitlement. The chess room served as Blackwood's temple to his imagined intellectual supremacy. Antique sets from Russia, India, and Germany filled glass cases worth more than luxury cars. Tournament trophies bought, not earned, gleamed under custom lighting. Leather-bound strategy books, most never opened, created an impressive backdrop for a man who preferred intimidation over actual skill. But in the servants' quarters, a different world existed entirely. Marcus Williams lived in the shadows of this opulence, a 12-year-old ghost who moved through marble halls without making a sound. Teachers at his underfunded public school never looked twice at the quiet black boy whose clothes were clean but clearly cheap. They had no idea that behind those thoughtful dark eyes burned an intellect that devoured knowledge like wildfire. During breaks from helping his mother, Marcus would slip into Blackwood's library and rescue books destined for donation. Advanced mathematics texts became his secret companions. Philosophy volumes fed his hungry mind, and chess strategy guides covered in dust because their owner cared more about winning through money than skill became his obsession. Marcus filled notebook margins with geometric patterns that would impress MIT professors. He solved calculus problems for entertainment while other kids played games. His spatial intelligence was so advanced he could visualize three-dimensional chess moves without touching a piece. But in Blackwood's world, brilliance from a black servant's son was not just invisible, it was impossible. Elena Williams had spent 8 years sacrificing everything for her son's future. At 38, her hands told the story of countless hours scrubbing floors, polishing silver, and enduring humiliation so Marcus might someday escape their circumstances. The college dreams she'd abandoned at 19 remained locked away, along with the photograph hidden under her mattress, Marcus at 9, holding his elementary school math competition certificate. Every morning at 5 a.m., Elena arrived at the manor for her 16-hour servitude. She cooked meals she couldn't afford to feed her own family. She cleaned rooms larger than her entire apartment. She listened to Blackwood's casual racism without flinching, knowing that one word of protest meant homelessness for her and Marcus. But lately, something had shifted in Elena's quiet strength. She'd begun watching Marcus with new eyes, seeing not just her beloved son, but a mind that could challenge everything Blackwood believed about intelligence and race. Richard Blackwood ruled his empire through fear and financial power. The tech billions had bought him everything, except the one thing his ego craved most: genuine respect for his intellect. His chess club presidency was purchased with donations. His tournament victories came from playing opponents too intimidated by his wealth to truly compete. 3 months ago, a young unknown player had destroyed him at a regional tournament, exposing his mediocrity to Connecticut's chess elite. The humiliation festered like an infected wound, driving him to increasingly desperate attempts to prove his intellectual superiority. To Blackwood, Elena and Marcus weren't human beings with dreams and potential, they were living proof of his genetic superiority. He forbade Marcus from the main house except when absolutely necessary, claiming the boy's presence contaminated the atmosphere of achievement. When Marcus occasionally revealed flashes of intelligence correcting a historical date, solving a math problem James struggled with, Blackwood would crush these moments with cutting remarks about knowing one's place and not getting ideas above one's station. Dr. Sarah Carter represented everything Blackwood pretended to be, a genuine intellectual with real credentials in child psychology. Her monthly visits had become uncomfortable for the billionaire as she quietly challenged his assumptions about intelligence distribution across racial and economic lines. "Last month, Doctor." Carter had witnessed something extraordinary. While waiting for Elena in the kitchen, she'd watched Marcus solve advanced pattern recognition puzzles in a discarded magazine. The boy completed sequences that would challenge graduate students, his mind processing complex information with stunning efficiency. "Remarkable," she'd whispered, but Marcus had simply smiled shyly and returned to his work. James Blackwood, 16 and increasingly ashamed of his father's behavior, harbored a secret. He knew Marcus was brilliant. The boy had helped him understand calculus concepts that stumped his expensive private tutors. Marcus could explain complex ideas with simple clarity that made difficult subjects suddenly accessible. But James lived in terror of his father's wrath. Speaking up for Marcus would mean becoming Blackwood's next target, and the teenage boy lacked the courage to face that storm. The Chess Circle 5 wealthy enablers who gathered every Friday evening provided Blackwood with an audience for his intellectual theater. Senator Bradley brought old money racism wrapped in political respectability. Tech CEO Morrison offered new money prejudice disguised as meritocracy. Investment banker Walsh enjoyed cruelty as entertainment. Real estate mogul Stevens had built his fortune on segregation and discrimination. Judge Patterson had spent decades ensuring justice served only those who looked like him. These men fed off each other's hatred, creating an echo chamber where Blackwood's prejudices felt validated and righteous. But cracks were appearing in this toxic foundation. Dr. Carter's gentle questions had planted seeds of doubt. Some guests had begun noticing Marcus's quiet intelligence during his brief appearances. The boy was growing harder to ignore, more difficult to dismiss as simply the help's son. Marcus himself was changing. The child who once flinched at insults now studied Blackwood with the calculating gaze of a strategist planning victory. He'd memorized his oppressor's chess preferences from overheard conversations. He'd analyzed Blackwood's tournament losses through discarded chess magazines. In the kitchen, where he spent most of his time, Marcus had been preparing for a moment he didn't yet know was coming. Using library books with missing pages, he'd mastered chess fundamentals that would impress grandmasters. He could replay entire famous games in his mind, visualizing complex positions without needing a physical board. Elena knew about his secret passion, but feared it would only bring trouble. Chess was Blackwood's domain, his source of pride and power. Discovery could destroy them both. Yet something electric was building in the manor's marble halls. In this world where intelligence was supposedly reserved for the wealthy and whiteness equated to worth, a young black boy possessed the one weapon that could shatter every assumption: undeniable, extraordinary genius. All he needed was a chance to prove it. The dinner party on that crisp October evening began like all the others. Wealthy guests sipping expensive wine while discussing their superiority over humanity's lesser elements. Dr. Carter sat quietly observing until Blackwood launched into his favorite topic, the genetic distribution of intelligence. "It's simple biology," Blackwood declared, swirling his $500 bottle of Bordeaux. "Intellectual capacity correlates directly with evolutionary advancement. Some populations simply lack the cognitive architecture for complex thought." Dr. Carter set down her glass with deliberate precision. "Richard, that's scientifically baseless. Intelligence appears randomly across all demographics. Some of history's greatest minds came from the most unlikely circumstances." The room fell silent. Nobody challenged Blackwood in his own home. "Prove it," Blackwood sneered. "Show me one example of intellectual superiority from—" And he gestured dismissively toward the kitchen where Elena was cleaning. "That population. What if I told you that Elena's son could outthink you at chess?" Blackwood's laughter was sharp and cruel. "Impossible. That boy probably thinks a rook is something you find in a bird's nest." Dr. Carter's eyes gleamed with opportunity. "Care to make it interesting? You mean a wager?" Senator Bradley leaned forward, sensing entertainment. "Exactly." Dr. Carter stood, her voice carrying the authority of someone with nothing to lose. "If Marcus beats you at chess, you fund his education anywhere he chooses, full scholarship, no limitations." Blackwood's ego, still raw from his recent tournament humiliation, couldn't resist such an easy victory. "And when will I crush him?" "I'll donate $50,000 to your foundation and publicly admit that genetic intelligence follows racial lines." The chess circle exchanged excited glances. This would be the ultimate validation of their worldview, a public demonstration of intellectual hierarchy. "Deal," Blackwood declared, extending his hand. "Friday evening, right here, full audience. I'll even call the local news, let them document scientific reality." As the handshake sealed Marcus's fate, Elena appeared in the doorway holding a silver tray. She'd heard every word, and the color drained from her face like water from a broken dam. Later that night, Elena sat on Marcus's narrow bed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mama, what's wrong?" Marcus asked, setting aside his geometry homework. "They want to use you, baby," she whispered. "Mr. O, Blackwood challenged you to a chess match. He thinks it'll prove we're inferior." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the same methodical approach he used for math problems. "Do you know I play chess, Mama?" Elena nodded. She'd watched him study those dusty library books, seen him sketch board positions during breaks. "Then you know I'm good at it." "But Marcus, this isn't about chess. It's about proving their hatred is justified. If you lose—" "I won't lose, Mama." His voice carried a quiet certainty that made Elena look up in surprise. "I've been studying Mr. Blackwood's games for months. I know exactly how he thinks." Marcus reached under his mattress and pulled out a notebook filled with chess analysis. Blackwood's tournament history, his preferred openings, his tactical weaknesses, all documented in careful detail. "I've been waiting for this chance my whole life," Marcus said softly. "Now they've given it to me." Elena stared at her son, really looked at him, and saw something that made her heart race with hope and terror. She was looking at a chess prodigy who was about to destroy everything Blackwood believed about the world. The memory always began the same way. 7-year-old Marcus sitting alone on the kitchen floor, surrounded by bottle caps and cardboard squares he'd carefully cut into chess piece shapes. The library book spread before him had 12 missing pages, but Marcus had memorized every diagram, every explanation of how the pieces moved across their battlefield of 64 squares. "Baby, what are you doing?" Elena had asked that first day, finding her son arranging his makeshift army with the precision of a general. "Learning to fight, Mama," Marcus had whispered, not looking up from his improvised board. That was the day Elena realized her son was different, not just smart, but possessed of something deeper, more dangerous. Intelligence that couldn't be contained by poverty or circumstance. The truth about Marcus's father lived in a shoebox hidden beneath Elena's bed letters from Dr. Michael Williams, a brilliant mathematician who'd abandoned them when Marcus was 5. Michael had been a chess master, a professor at Yale, a man whose mind worked in patterns and possibilities that ordinary people couldn't comprehend. He saw the world like a chess game, Elena had explained to Marcus on his 10th birthday, finally sharing the letters. Every move is calculated 3 steps ahead, but that same mind that made him brilliant also made him unable to handle the messiness of real-life diapers, bills, responsibility. Marcus had studied his father's photograph with clinical detachment. "Do I look like him, Mama?" "You have his eyes," Elena had whispered, "and his brain. But you have my heart." The years that followed were a masterclass in invisibility. Marcus learned to hide his intelligence like other children hid contraband. When teachers overlooked his raised hand for the 15th time, he stopped raising it. When classmates mocked his second-hand clothes, he retreated into books. When Blackwood dismissed his presence entirely, Marcus began studying his oppressor like a specimen under a microscope. School became a daily exercise in mediocrity. Marcus would solve advanced calculus problems in his notebook margins while pretending to struggle with basic algebra. He'd read philosophy texts during lunch break while his classmates played games on their phones. He'd compose chess strategies in his mind while teachers droned through lessons he'd mastered years earlier. The isolation was crushing. Eating alone in the cafeteria day after day, Marcus would use chess notation to record imaginary games against famous grandmasters. In his mind, he battled Kasparov, Fischer, and Carlsen, learning from their strategies while other kids learned about popularity and social hierarchies. But the hardest moments came at home, watching his mother sacrifice everything for his future. Elena's hands told the story of their struggle, cracked and bleeding from industrial chemicals, scarred from years of scrubbing floors that cost more per square foot than their monthly rent. She worked 16-hour days to afford Marcus's school supplies, often going without meals so he could have proper notebooks and pencils. "Education is the only way out," she'd whisper while bandaging her wounded fingers. "Promise me you'll use that beautiful mind to escape this place." Marcus made that promise every night, but the weight of it felt heavier than the mansion's marble columns. The chess books his father had left behind became Marcus's secret teachers. While Elena slept, exhausted from another day of servitude, Marcus would study by candlelight to save on electricity bills. He memorized the games of masters, analyzed their strategies, and began developing his own approach to the ancient game. By age 11, Marcus could visualize entire chess matches without looking at a board. He'd replay famous games in his mind during the long hours spent waiting for his mother in Blackwood's kitchen. The boy who couldn't afford proper chess pieces had mastered positional play, tactical combinations, and endgame theory that would impress international masters. But brilliance without opportunity felt like a curse. What good was genius when nobody bothered to look? What value did intelligence have when society had already decided your worth based on skin color and social class? The breaking point came 6 months ago when Marcus had quietly corrected a historical error during one of James's tutoring sessions. Blackwood had overheard and erupted in rage, threatening to fire Elena for raising an uppity child who didn't know his place. That night, Elena had cried herself to sleep while Marcus lay awake, fury burning in his chest like molten steel. He began documenting everything: Blackwood's chess weaknesses, his tactical preferences, his psychological patterns under pressure. "Someday," Marcus had whispered to his father's photograph, "I'm going to show them what we're really capable of." The promise felt like a prayer, a declaration of war, and a love letter to his mother's sacrifices all wrapped into one. Marcus Williams was ready to prove that genius couldn't be contained by expectations, circumstances, or other people's limitations. He just needed someone foolish enough to give him the chance. Friday evening arrived like Judgment Day. Blackwood's chess room had been transformed into an arena of privilege. 20 of Connecticut's most powerful people arranged in leather chairs around the mahogany table that would serve as Marcus's battlefield. The ornate Russian chess set, worth more than Elena's annual salary, gleamed under crystal chandeliers that cast dramatic shadows across ivory and ebony pieces. Senator Bradley adjusted his gold cufflinks while whispering to investment banker Walsh, "This should be entertaining watching Blackwood destroy that boy's delusions." Tech CEO Morrison live-streamed discreetly to his social media followers. "About to witness some real-world education," he typed with cruel anticipation. Marcus entered wearing his only good outfit, a navy blue shirt Elena had pressed until it looked almost new, paired with khakis that were slightly too short but meticulously clean. 20 pairs of eyes studied him like scientists observing a lab specimen. Marcus felt their stares but kept his gaze fixed on the chessboard, where his destiny waited in 64 squares. Blackwood stood dramatically, addressing his audience like a professor before a lecture. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we conduct a scientific experiment. We'll test whether natural intellectual superiority can overcome learned behavior, whether breeding and genetics triumph over mere mimicry." Polite applause rippled through the room. Dr. Carter sat rigid in her chair, suddenly doubting the wisdom of this wager. "The rules are simple," Blackwood continued. "Standard chess, no time limits, winner takes all. When I defeat this boy, we'll have definitive proof that intelligence follows evolutionary lines." Marcus said nothing, simply pulling out his chair and sitting across from his oppressor. Blackwood opened with King's pawn to e4, an aggressive classical beginning designed to dominate the center and intimidate his young opponent. He moved with theatrical confidence, expecting Marcus to respond with some amateur move that would confirm his genetic theories. Instead, Marcus played e6, the French defense. The room stirred with confusion. Senator Bradley leaned forward, frowning. "What's that move supposed to accomplish?" Dr. Carter's eyes widened with recognition. The French defense was sophisticated, positional, a choice that required a deep understanding of chess strategy. It looked passive but set deadly traps for overconfident opponents. Simple explanation. Marcus had chosen a defensive strategy that appeared weak but was actually laying groundwork for a counterattack. Like a martial artist using an opponent's aggression against them. Moves 2 to 8 unfolded with increasing complexity. Blackwood continued his aggressive assault, developing knights and bishops with textbook precision. But Marcus's responses showed something unexpected. Each defensive move served multiple purposes, controlling key squares while preparing hidden tactics. "The boy's just copying moves from a book," real estate mogul Stevens muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Marcus had developed his pieces efficiently, each one supporting the others in a web of protection and potential. While Blackwood attacked blindly, Marcus built a fortress with secret passages. Simple explanation. Blackwood was like a boxer throwing wild punches, while Marcus was like a chess master patient, precise, planning 3 moves ahead. On move 12, Marcus made a move that stopped conversations mid-sentence. He advanced his H-pawn, seemingly opening his king to attack. A move that looked like suicide to amateur observers. "Ha!" Blackwood laughed. "The boy's cracking under pressure." That's a beginner's mistake. But Dr. Carter saw something else entirely. The pawn advance wasn't a mistake. It was preparation for a devastating kingside attack that wouldn't materialize for another 10 moves. Marcus was thinking so far ahead that his current moves looked wrong to people who couldn't see the bigger picture. Simple explanation. Marcus was like an architect laying foundation stones for a building that wouldn't be visible for weeks. Others saw random rocks. He saw a masterpiece under construction. By move 15, the whispered conversations had stopped entirely. Guests leaned forward, studying the board with growing fascination. Marcus wasn't just surviving Blackwood's attack, he was systematically dismantling it while building his own threats. "Richard," Judge Patterson called out quietly, "are you sure you have this under control?" Blackwood's confident smile had become a grimace of concentration. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the room's perfect climate control. Move 18 delivered the evening's first thunderbolt. Marcus lifted his knight worth 3 points in traditional chess scoring and placed it directly in the path of Blackwood's bishop. A clear sacrifice that seemed to give away material for nothing. The room erupted in confused murmurs. "What is he doing? That makes no sense." The boy's lost his mind. But Marcus sat calmly, his hands folded, waiting for Blackwood to realize the trap. Simple explanation. Marcus had given up a knight to trap Blackwood's queen like sacrificing a soldier to capture the enemy general. It looked like a loss, but was actually a devastating tactical blow. When Blackwood finally captured the knight, Marcus's follow-up move revealed the sacrifice's brilliant purpose. His remaining pieces converged on Blackwood's exposed queen like wolves surrounding prey. No matter where the queen moved, Marcus could capture it on the next turn. Blackwood stared at the board in growing horror, finally understanding that the amateur across from him had orchestrated a masterpiece of tactical warfare. "Impossible," he whispered. But the evidence sat right there in ivory and ebony. A 12-year-old boy had just outthought one of Connecticut's supposed intellectual elite. The real game was only beginning. Blackwood returned from the intermission like a man possessed, his face flushed with alcohol and desperation. During the 15-minute break, he'd cornered Elena in the kitchen, his voice dripping with venom. "Tell your boy to throw this game, or you're both out on the street tonight," he'd hissed. "I don't care how smart he thinks he is, he needs to learn his place." Elena had looked him straight in the eye with newfound courage. "My son knows exactly who he is, Mr. Blackwood. The question is, do you?" Now, settling back into his chair, Blackwood cracked his knuckles like a prizefighter preparing for war. "I was going easy on you, boy. Time to see what happens when I actually try." The guests leaned forward, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Morrison's live stream had gained 3,000 viewers. Senator Bradley whispered side bets to Judge Patterson. Marcus sat perfectly still, studying the position with the calm focus of a surgeon before a delicate operation. Blackwood had lost his queen for a knight, a devastating material disadvantage, but the game was far from over. Move 22 began Blackwood's desperate counterattack. He launched every remaining piece at Marcus's king in a frenzied assault that looked spectacular but lacked strategic foundation. His rooks doubled on the open file, his bishop sliced across the diagonal, his remaining knight leaped toward Marcus's position like a wild animal. "Now we'll see some real chess," Blackwood declared, slamming his pieces down with unnecessary force. Simple explanation. Blackwood was like a general throwing his entire army into one final desperate charge, impressive to watch but strategically unsound. The room buzzed with excitement as white pieces swarmed toward the Black King. To untrained eyes, it looked like Marcus was about to be overwhelmed by superior firepower. But Marcus's response revealed the depth of his understanding. Instead of panicking, he began what chess masters call dynamic defense. Each move served multiple purposes, blocking immediate threats while secretly improving his position. Move 24. Marcus's rook slid to the back rank, apparently retreating in fear. The crowd murmured about the boy finally showing his inexperience. Dr. Carter saw differently. That rook wasn't running, it was positioning itself for a devastating counterattack that would come when Blackwood overextended himself. Simple explanation. Marcus was like a matador, stepping aside to let the charging bull tire itself out while preparing the killing stroke. By move 28, the difference in chess understanding became impossible to ignore. While Blackwood threw pieces forward in increasingly desperate attacks, Marcus calmly repositioned his forces, each move flowing logically from the last. "How is he doing this?" Tech CEO Morrison whispered to his live stream audience. "The kid's not even sweating." Marcus executed a textbook fork on move 30, his bishop simultaneously attacking Blackwood's rook and knight. In chess, when one piece attacks two enemies at once, the opponent must lose something valuable. Simple explanation. It was like a single soldier pointing guns at two enemy generals simultaneously. One of them had to fall. Blackwood's hands trembled slightly as he realized the trap. No matter which piece he saved, he'd lose the other. His aggressive attack was collapsing into tactical chaos. "This is impossible," he muttered, accidentally knocking over his water glass. Ice cubes scattered across the mahogany table like his crumbling strategy. The psychological warfare was as brutal as the chess tactics. Marcus used exactly the same amount of time for each move. Methodical, unhurried, completely composed. Meanwhile, Blackwood consumed his clock in frantic calculation, sweat staining his expensive shirt. Clock management, Doctor. Carter explained quietly to Senator Bradley. The boy's using only 30% of his time while Richard burns through 80%. That's master-level discipline. Move 35 brought the evening's second shock. Marcus's earlier random moves suddenly revealed themselves as an elaborate trap that had been 15 moves in the making. Blackwood's pieces, which had seemed aggressively positioned, were actually caught in a web of tactical threats. Simple explanation. Marcus had been like a spider, patiently weaving strands until his prey was completely entangled. Only when Blackwood tried to escape did he realize he was trapped. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Carter stood up, her voice cutting through the stunned silence, "we're witnessing something extraordinary. This young man is demonstrating master-level chess understanding." The crowd's murmurs shifted from skeptical to amazed. How is this possible? Where did he learn to play like this? Richard, who is this boy? Blackwood attempted an illegal move in his desperation, advancing his king into check. James immediately pointed out the error, his voice carrying new respect. "Dad, that move isn't legal. Your king would be captured. Quiet! Adults are playing!" Blackwood snapped, but his authority was crumbling with each passing move. For the first time in the game, Marcus spoke directly to his opponent. "Actually, sir, that move violates chess rules. Your king cannot move into check." His voice was respectful but firm, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was talking about. The room fell completely silent. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus Williams had corrected Richard Blackwood in public and been absolutely right. The power dynamic that had defined their relationship was shifting before 20 witnesses. The servant's son was teaching the master the rules of his own game. Elena appeared in the doorway, watching with tears of pride as her son demonstrated the brilliance she'd always known he possessed. Move 38 brought the position to its crucial turning point. Marcus had not just survived Blackwood's desperate attack, he'd systematically dismantled it while building an unstoppable counteroffensive. The board showed the mathematical truth that privilege couldn't hide. Marcus Williams was the superior chess player, and everyone in that room could see it. Blackwood stared at the position, finally understanding that he wasn't just losing a chess game, he was watching his entire world view crumble, one move at a time. The transformation began with Dr. Carter's voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade through silk. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, rising from her chair with the authority of someone who'd spent 20 years evaluating exceptional minds. "We are witnessing something truly extraordinary here. This young man is playing at near master level." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Senator Bradley's wine glass paused halfway to his lips. Investment banker Walsh stopped his whispered commentary mid-sentence. Tech CEO Morrison's livestream chat exploded with shocked reactions from 3,000 viewers. Master level? Real estate mogul Stevens leaned forward, studying the board with new eyes. How is that possible? Judge Patterson, who'd been dismissive moments earlier, now examined the position with the careful attention of someone reassessing everything he thought he knew. "Richard, where exactly did this boy learn to play like this?" The question Blackwood couldn't answer hung in the room like an accusation. James Blackwood chose that moment to make his first act of rebellion in 16 years of life. He stood up slowly, walked around the table, and positioned himself directly behind Marcus's chair. "Dad," his voice carried across the silent room, "you always said chess reveals a person's true character. What exactly is it revealing about you right now?" Blackwood's face flushed crimson. "James, sit down. You don't understand what's happening here." "I understand perfectly," James replied, his teenage voice cracking with emotion. "I've watched Marcus help me with calculus problems that stumped my private tutors. I've seen him solve equations in his head while you called him stupid. I knew he was brilliant. I was just too scared to say it. The confession hit the room like a physical blow. If Blackwood's own son had recognized Marcus's intelligence, what did that say about everyone else's willful blindness? Elena Williams stepped fully into the chess room for the first time in 8 years of servitude. No longer the invisible servant, she moved with quiet dignity toward her son. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackwood." Her voice was steady, controlled, and powerful. "Marcus needs to concentrate. Please stop talking during his turn." The role reversal was complete. For the first time in their relationship, Elena was making demands instead of apologizing. The woman who'd spent years accepting humiliation in silence had found her voice at the moment her son was proving their worth. The crowd's murmurs had completely shifted tone. What began as cruel entertainment had become an invested fascination. Senator Bradley pulled out his phone, quietly researching chess academies. Judge Patterson whispered to his wife about scholarship opportunities. Morrison's live stream had reached 5,000 viewers, the comments flowing like a digital river. "This kid is incredible." "David versus Goliath in real time." "Someone get this boy a scholarship." "Blackwood is getting destroyed by a 12-year-old. Dr. Carter seized the moment to deliver the final blow to Blackwood's crumbling authority. "Richard, I've evaluated gifted children for 2 decades. What we're seeing isn't luck or memorization. This is genuine, extraordinary intelligence." Blackwood tried one last desperate assertion of dominance. "This doesn't prove anything. Anyone can get lucky at chess." "Lucky?" Dr. Carter's laugh was sharp. "He's 15 moves ahead of you, Richard. He's been controlling this game since move 10. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 of Connecticut's most powerful people sat watching a 12-year-old black boy systematically dismantle their assumptions about intelligence, race, and human potential. Marcus caught his mother's eye across the room. The look they shared said everything. "This is our moment. This is what we've been fighting for." The stage was set for the final act. The chessboard had become a battlefield where mathematics met destiny. Marcus studied the position one final time, his dark eyes moving across the 64 squares like a general surveying conquered territory. Every piece, every possibility, every consequence crystallized in his mind with perfect clarity. The room held its collective breath. Morrison's live stream had reached 8,000 viewers. Senator Bradley gripped his armrest. Dr. Carter leaned forward, recognizing they were about to witness chess history. Marcus's hand hovered over his queen, the most powerful piece on the board, the one that could strike in any direction with devastating force. For a moment that felt like eternity, time suspended itself in Blackwood's mansion. Then Marcus moved. Queen to d4, center of the board, the ultimate power position. "Checkmate in 2 moves, sir." His voice cut through the silence like a sword through silk, calm, respectful, but carrying the unshakable certainty of mathematical truth. Blackwood's face went through a spectrum of emotions, confusion, disbelief, desperate hope, and finally, dawning horror. He stared at the board, searching frantically for an escape that didn't exist. "That's impossible." Blackwood's voice cracked like breaking glass. "Show me!" "Prove it." The demand hung in the air like a challenge to the laws of physics themselves. Marcus stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and graceful. For 8 years, he'd been invisible in this room. Now every eye followed him as he walked around the table to stand beside the board. "If you move your king to e8, Marcus said, gently sliding the white king to demonstrate, "my queen captures it like this." His queen swept across the board with elegant finality. He reset the position. "If you move your king to f7 instead," the king moved to its only other legal square, "my rook delivers checkmate from the back rank." Marcus's rook slid into position with a soft click against the mahogany board. No matter where your king goes, Marcus concluded, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone explaining a law of nature, it cannot escape. The demonstration was flawless, undeniable, and devastating. Even the guests who barely understood chess could see the trap's mathematical perfection. Blackwood's king was surrounded, doomed, finished. The room erupted. Extraordinary. Dr. Carter leaped to her feet, applauding wildly. Absolutely extraordinary. How is this possible? Senator Bradley whispered to no one in particular. Judge Patterson shook his head in amazement. I've never seen anything like this. Morrison's live stream chat exploded with reactions. Goat! Kid is a genius. This is unreal. Blackwood got schooled. But Blackwood himself sat frozen, staring at the board like a man watching his world collapse. The position didn't lie. The mathematicians didn't care about his wealth, his status, or his prejudices. Chess was pure truth, and the truth was crushing. Marcus extended his hand across the table in the traditional gesture of chess sportsmanship. Good game, sir. For a moment, Blackwood couldn't move. The idea of shaking hands with the boy he'd humiliated for years, the child he'd dismissed as intellectually inferior, seemed impossible. But 20 pairs of eyes watched him. 8,000 online viewers waited. The weight of public scrutiny forced his hand. Blackwood's handshake was limp, defeated. Good game, he managed to whisper. The words tasted like ashes in his mouth. Elena couldn't contain herself any longer. She rushed forward, tears streaming down her face, and wrapped her son in an embrace that 8 years of suppressed pride poured into. I'm so proud of you, baby, she whispered against his ear. So proud. Marcus buried his face in his mother's shoulder, finally allowing himself to feel the magnitude of what had just happened. They cried together, tears of joy, relief, vindication, and love, while the room erupted in sustained applause. Morrison's live stream had hit 10,000 viewers. The comments were unanimous in their amazement. This kid is going places. Someone get him a chess coach. The most beautiful game I've ever seen. Dr. Carter approached the embracing mother and son, her voice thick with emotion. Marcus, would you like to know what you just accomplished? You played a game that chess masters will study for years. Blackwood sat alone at the board, staring at the pieces that had revealed his intellectual nakedness to the world. The servant's son had just taught the master the most important lesson of his life. Genius recognizes no social boundaries. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of professional authority and moral outrage. Richard, do you understand what just happened here? This brilliant child has been cleaning your house for 8 years while you dismissed his humanity based on the color of his skin. The words hit the room like a physical slap. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, suddenly aware of their complicity in something ugly and shameful. Senator Bradley was the first to crack. How many times did we walk past him? How many times did we treat him like furniture? He was right there, investment banker Walsh whispered, his voice hollow with realization. All those Friday nights he was right there, and we never saw him. Judge Patterson removed his glasses, cleaning them with shaking hands. What other talents are we overlooking? How many other children have we written off because they don't fit our narrow expectations? Elena Williams stepped forward, no longer the submissive servant, but a mother whose dignity had been restored by her son's triumph. When she spoke, her voice carried 8 years of suppressed truth. My son has always been brilliant, she said, looking directly at each guest in turn. You just never bothered to look. You saw a black boy in second-hand clothes and decided his worth before he ever opened his mouth. The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison's live stream chat had become a torrent of social justice commentary as viewers grasped the deeper meaning of what they'd witnessed. Blackwood tried to salvage something from the wreckage of his worldview. I never imagined. How was I supposed to know? Marcus looked up from his mother's embrace, his young voice carrying wisdom beyond his years. You weren't supposed to know, Mr. Blackwood. You were supposed to look. You were supposed to see me as a person worth knowing. The simple statement carried more moral authority than any sermon. A 12-year-old boy had just taught a room full of adults about basic human decency. Dr. Carter seized the moment to drive home the larger lesson. Every person in this room employs people you consider beneath you. When's the last time you really looked at them? Really listened to them? Really considered that they might have dreams, talents, and intelligence that could humble you? Real estate mogul Stevens squirmed in his chair. But how could we have known? He's just he's the help's son? Elena finished, her voice sharp as a blade. Is that what you were going to say? Because that help's son just demonstrated chess mastery that none of you possess. James Blackwood stepped forward, his teenage voice trembling with long, suppressed guilt. I knew. I've known for years that Marcus was smarter than me, smarter than my tutors, probably smarter than anyone in this room. But I was too cowardly to speak up. He turned to face his father directly. You taught me that intelligence was genetic, that it followed bloodlines and bank accounts. But Marcus just proved that everything you believe is a lie. Blackwood's face had gone ashen. The foundation of his superiority complex was crumbling in real time, witnessed by his peers and broadcast to thousands online. Tech CEO Morrison found his voice, speaking to his live stream audience. I think we all need to examine our assumptions about people, about who deserves an opportunity and who doesn't. Dr. Carter nodded approvingly. Genius isn't distributed by zip code, skin color, or social class. It appears randomly throughout humanity, and our job, our moral obligation, is to recognize and nurture it wherever we find it. Marcus stepped away from his mother, standing tall despite his youth. My mama always taught me to judge people by their character and what they do when nobody's watching. Tonight, everybody was watching, and you all saw what really matters, not where someone comes from, but what they can achieve when given the chance. The moral weight of his words settled over the room like a blanket. These powerful people, accustomed to judging others, now found themselves judged by a 12-year-old's moral clarity. Elena placed her hand on her son's shoulder. Marcus isn't angry at any of you. But I hope tonight taught you something about the assumptions you make and the people you overlook. Senator Bradley stood up slowly. It did. God help me, it absolutely did. One by one, the other guests began approaching Elena with business cards, scholarship information, and genuine apologies. The revolution Marcus had started with chess pieces was spreading into hearts and minds, one conscience at a time. The transformation began before Marcus and Elena even left Blackwood Manor that night. Morrison's live stream had exploded across social media platforms, the video gaining 100,000 views in the first hour. #Chess Prodigy. Marcus began trending worldwide as viewers shared the incredible footage of a 12-year-old dismantling both a chess opponent and deeply rooted prejudices. By midnight, 3 elite chess academies had called Dr. Carter offering full scholarships. The Phillips Exeter Academy left a voicemail promising immediate enrollment with complete financial support. 2 former grandmasters reached out through social media, volunteering to coach Marcus for free. But the most immediate change came from an unexpected source. Blackwood, humiliated but not entirely without conscience, approached Elena as she gathered her cleaning supplies for the last time. The boy gets his scholarship, he said quietly, unable to meet her eyes. Full ride to any school he chooses. And you, he paused, swallowing his pride. You're promoted to house manager. 40% raise, effective immediately. Elena studied his face, seeing something she'd never witnessed before, genuine shame. "We'll take the raise," she said with quiet dignity. "But we won't be living in the servants' quarters anymore. We'll take the guest house, and we'll pay fair rent." For the first time in their 8-year relationship, Elena Williams was negotiating as an equal. 1 week later, Marcus appeared on Good Morning America, his story captivating millions of viewers who'd never heard of the French defense, but understood perfectly the universal language of triumph over prejudice. The segment, titled "The Boy Genius Hidden in Plain Sight," became the network's most-watched interview of the year. The interviewer, Sarah Martinez, leaned forward with genuine curiosity. "Marcus, what went through your mind when Mr. Blackwood first challenged you to that game?" Marcus, now wearing a proper suit donated by a clothing company inspired by his story, smiled with the confidence of someone who'd found his voice. "I thought about my mama, about all the times she told me that respect isn't given, it's earned. I wanted to earn it for both of us." The interview sparked a national conversation about recognizing hidden talent in unexpected places. School districts across the country implemented new programs designed to identify gifted children regardless of their economic background. 3 months later, the changes had become permanent and profound. Marcus had accepted a full scholarship to the prestigious Dalton Academy, where he quickly rose to become the youngest player ever on their varsity chess team. His rapid ascent through scholastic chess rankings caught the attention of the U.S. Chess Federation, who invited him to training camps with the country's top junior players. But Marcus's transformation extended far beyond chess. At Dalton, surrounded by resources he'd never dreamed of accessing, his mathematical genius flourished. Teachers who initially questioned how a scholarship kid had gained admission soon found themselves struggling to keep pace with his intellectual curiosity. Elena, meanwhile, had enrolled in online college courses, pursuing the education degree she'd abandoned 18 years earlier. Blackwood, in what he claimed was a gesture of good faith, but everyone recognized as desperate reputation management, was paying her tuition in full. "I'm going to become an advocate for gifted children in working-class families," Elena told a reporter from the Hartford Courant. "There are thousands of kids like Marcus out there, invisible to a system that only looks for genius in familiar places." The ripple effects continued expanding in ways no one had anticipated. Dr. Carter had been invited to speak at education conferences across the country, sharing Marcus's story as a case study in the danger of unconscious bias. Her presentation, "The Invisible Gifted: How Socioeconomic Assumptions Blind Us to Extraordinary Minds," became required viewing in several graduate education programs. Senator Bradley, shaken by his role in that evening's events, quietly introduced legislation increasing federal funding for chess programs in underserved schools. He never publicly connected the bill to Marcus's story, but insiders understood the inspiration. James Blackwood had transferred to a public high school, claiming he wanted a more diverse educational experience. His real motivation was simpler. He could no longer stomach the privilege he'd inherited while watching Marcus fight for every opportunity. 6 months after that fateful Friday evening, Marcus achieved something that made national headlines. He won the Connecticut State Junior Chess Championship, defeating opponents who'd been training with private coaches since childhood. Elena sat in the tournament hall, no longer invisible, watching her son accept the trophy with tears of joy streaming down her face. Photographers captured the moment, and the image mother and son embracing after his victory became an iconic representation of perseverance and potential. The most dramatic consequence, however, was Blackwood's fall from grace. The viral video had done more than embarrass him. It had revealed his character to business partners who'd previously overlooked his prejudices. 3 major investors pulled out of his latest venture. The Connecticut Chess Club voted him out as president. His social standing in elite circles, built on the assumption of intellectual superiority, crumbled as the video continued circulating. But perhaps most significantly, Blackwood had begun funding chess programs in 10 underserved schools across Connecticut. He never publicly acknowledged the connection to Marcus's story, but Elena knew. It was his way of making amends without admitting culpability. 1 year later, the transformation was complete. Marcus, now 13, had qualified for the National Junior Chess Championship while maintaining straight A's at Dalton. MIT had already reached out about their early admission program, intrigued by the mathematical papers he'd begun publishing with his advanced algebra teacher. Elena had graduated with her bachelor's degree in education and was consulting with school districts nationwide about identifying and nurturing hidden academic talent. Her speaking fee was more than she'd made in a year as Blackwood's servant. The Marcus Williams Chess Foundation, established with donations from viewers of Morrison's viral video, had provided chess instruction to over 5,000 children in underserved communities. 3 of those students had already qualified for national tournaments. But the most powerful moment came during the foundation's first annual gala, held in the same Connecticut venue where Blackwood's Friday night chess circle once met. Marcus, now a confident young man who carried himself with quiet authority, addressed an audience of educators, philanthropists, and policymakers. That night, 18 months ago, I didn't just win a chess game. I proved that genius can't be contained by other people's expectations, limited by economic circumstances, or diminished by the color of someone's skin. But more importantly, I proved that when we truly see each other, really see each other, we discover that extraordinary potential exists everywhere. The standing ovation lasted for 3 full minutes. As the applause died down, Marcus delivered his final message. Look around you tonight. Look at the servers, the security guards, the cleaning staff. Really look at them. Because the next person who changes the world might be invisible to you right now, waiting for someone to give them a chance to prove what they're capable of.